Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hi folks, my name's Alex Proulx. I'm a lab technician, an insect enthusiast, a family man, and I love video games and D&D. Both have played a huge part in my life. And today, as the title suggests, I'm going to be talking to you about Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64 and how it impacted my life and really made me who I am today. So, for those of you who do not know, Paper Mario is a turn-based RPG developed by Intelligent Systems and produced by Nintendo, released originally in North America in 2001. It takes place in a storybook where you play as a 2D paper cutout of Mario, I should say, in a 3D almost origami world. The story itself isn't groundbreaking by any means. Bowser steals Princess Peach. Mario travels across the land collecting MacGuffins to defeat Bowser. The end. But this came out at a time where some of the biggest games were GoldenEye or Super Smash Bros., Mario Kart, or various other sports games like NHL 99 or what have you. So that was the talk of the playground, and none of them were really resonating with me. One, because, you need a lot of friends to play some of those games, and two, because I was really getting into more plot-driven sources of media. I was reading the second book in The Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, and my love for a good story was really, really revving up. I was no longer browsing the young adult section in the Scholastic Book Fair, I should say. So I went to a buddy's house. They put one of those janky Nintendo 64 controllers in my hand and said, try out this game, Paper Mario. And I was immediately floored by the aesthetic of the game. Nothing else really looked like it at the time. All these 2D sprites against this 3D but almost 2D background. It was really neat to look at. And the gameplay was fun. The story was fun. It made me laugh. It made me care about the characters. So I was hooked. I went home. Probably the next day, I went over to the Blockbuster and picked up a copy. And it was one of those games that I rented 3 or 4 times and eventually shelled out all my paper route money to buy a copy for myself. And I played it to death. So as I was saying, the aesthetic is very unique in that you are a 2D cutout of Mario. When you fall from a great height, you kind of do that paper swish swish from side to side thing. It doesn't really affect the gameplay as much. It's just every once in a while you go, oh yeah, I'm made of paper. And there's a lot of comedy built around that. The gameplay, it was my first introduction to any kind of turn-based strategy game. Now, I use strategy with the broadest terms because looking back now, it wasn't that much harder than rock, paper, scissors. But at the time, the fact that you had to jump on an enemy first before they hit you to roll up this whole combat screen where you and a partner that you had in combat would go turn by turn against the enemy, which, foreshadowed my love of D&D. But you couldn't use the same trick on everything. You had to use your hammer to hit enemies with spikes on their heads. For the enemies that were flying, you had to jump on them. And timing was everything. To use a hammer, you had to hold back the joystick until the proper moment and release it to get the damage out. For jumping, if you timed a click of the A button at the perfect time, you turn your normal jump into a double jump. It was engaging enough that it kept me going back and back for more. Not to mention that the RPG elements were really baked in there. You got experience for defeating enemies, and you leveled up, and you could level up your health. You could level up your flower power, which was just magic power so that you could use to use special abilities. And you could level up your badge points, I believe they were called, where you could equip these badges that gave you unique special abilities or feats or traits. It really let you play the game differently every time. So the gameplay itself was catchy. Second thing that really stood out for me was the characters. The dialogue that they spoke was witty. It was funny. It was dry. There were these characters, the Koopa Bros, who were just straight up ripoff of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They were Koopa Troopas wearing colored bandanas, and they'd say things like, whoa, totally. But they were so inept, and they were so funny. And there's so many winks and nods. I loved it, and they kept coming back. Same with Trooper Jr. He was your self-instated rival from the beginning who kept showing up and teaching you new abilities, new skills by letting you trounce them. And they just had such heart. All the partners that you could get, from Goombario to Paracupa, all these various like species and fauna that you'd fight in the normal Mario games, all had dialogue, all lived alongside you and were your friends and would help you out in battle. And you fell in love with their stories. Each of them had their own goals. Like you're helping Cooper find his dead dad. You were helping Bao the Boo win save back all her servants and her friends. Another thing that it did was it actually made me scared at times. There's this one enemy, Tubba Blubba, who has a whole chapter based off him, and he's invincible. And you sneak into his house, and at one point he spots you and he chases you out of the house, and there's nothing you can do. And my heart as a child almost beat out of my chest. There's a lava-filled volcano that you fight a boss in, and then you need to run to escape the lava. Again, it was intense. There was just so much range in the emotions that this game made me feel, from sorrow to happiness to laughter to fear. And it really stuck with me. The other thing that really stuck with me too was the world itself. It was so varied. I loved the formula of there being a prologue, which was the tutorial, then chapter 1, and you'd go off to the Koopa village and learn all their secrets and help them out. Chapter 2, you'd go to the dry desert. There was a chapter that took place inside a children's storybook where you fought a bunch of Shy Guys. There was another chapter that had you solving a murder mystery with a bunch of penguins up in the north. It was just so varied, and you were always excited to play the next chapter. And after every boss battle, which were also unique, you would transfer your perspective and go to Peach, who had been taken captive. And as Peach, you would sneak out of your room in the Bowser's castle. You would read his diary. You'd send messages to Mario to help him out on his journey. There was things that, like, you could convince someone named Kami Koopa that when she found you, she would ask you, what does Mario hate? And you'd be like, oh, he hates Goombas. In the next chapter, you'd fight a bunch of Goombas. Or, like, you could just blatantly lie and say, oh, he hates mushrooms. And she'd be like, yeah? And you'd be like, yeah. And then when she fought you, she'd throw a mushroom at you, which would give you health. There were just so many small details, and they all paid off, and they all immersed you so deeply. Like in the dry desert, for example, the puzzle solving, the whole thing. You ride a train out to this mountain, have to climb across this mountain, fight a buzzard who will attack you if you say you're Mario. But if you tell him you're Luigi, he's like, oh yeah, go for it, pass by. You end up in this massive sprawling desert, which is just a giant grid map, almost like the Wind Waker, but dry, where you could just comb the entire desert and find the secret temple you're looking for. Or you could go to town and you could listen through walls to people talking, find a secret society. There weren't any waypoints that told you go to this point on a map. You had to read the text, do the legwork, find out, oh, you had to buy a dried shroom and dried pasta at this shop as a secret handshake. And they would show you the way to the secret temple. It was just a lot of depth for this simple game. And it really stole the show for me. When the game concludes, you strike down Bowser. There's this parade led by Luigi when the credits are rolling, where all the characters you've met along the way are kind of walking this parade. And I wept as this child, this preteen, adolescent, at 2D Mario games. And I was overjoyed when the sequel came out on the GameCube, Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, which really built on everything great in the first game and added to it, and is one of my favorite games of all time. But it wasn't the original. Paper Mario really taught me to respect storytelling, respect a simple concept, and really go for things that make me feel for the characters. And I can really thank Paper Mario for me loving RPG games like the Mass Effect trilogy and other turn-based role-playing games like even XCOM 2 or Slay the Spire. My initial love for all these strategy and all these character-driven games with huge plot points really came from Paper Mario. And if you have the chance, I'd highly recommend going back and giving it a shot. You never know, like in times as they are, you might need a laugh or a cry or a scare. So again, this is Alex. Thanks for listening and happy gaming.
Before the Wicked Witch of the West and those gals from Salem, there was Circe, the captivating and kind of catastrophic Greek witch who did more than just turn men into pigs.
I'm Rose.
I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Gloria.
Join us this fall on Circling Circe, the podcast where we talk about Madeline Miller's incredible book, Circe.
We go through the novel chapter by chapter. We laugh, we cry from laughing. We swoon over Daedalus and other Greek hotties and talk way too much about food, life, and scented candles.
I'm hydrated. I'm ready. I'm
You're
pumped
ready.
to talk about Greek gods and titans.
Let's do this.
Lasagna is not supposed to be cool. It's supposed to be eaten hot, stupid.
Who just looked at a cow and was like, hey, sexy, moo right over here. Like,
It's 11:45. I need to go eat my liver.
my Prometheus pate.
And Granny's like, get out!
We post every Wednesday, so mark your calendars
Make like Scylla.
Grab a sailor.
and dive in.
Find Circling Circe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Do we want to do an outro? Or
Yeah.
Is that your outro?
That's it.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.